Hi everyone, my name's James Haar, Research Lead for APAC at Aurora Energy Research. I'm delighted today to be hosting this special Careers podcast episode called Australian Graduate Analyst Program Explained. Today, I'll be sitting down with two guests who are current graduate analysts in the Australian program. First, Daniel Mechtersheimer.
Hi everyone.
And Michael Veld.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us, guys, both of whom are going to share their first-hand experience working at Aurora on the graduate program. I'm also joined by Mahia Maliat, our early careers advisor for Australia.
Thanks, James. Hi, everyone.
So, Daniel, to get us started today, could you explain a little bit about your academic background and what led you to the graduate program at Aurora?
Yeah, so my background was in statistics and economics. So it was very quantitative focused, but not necessarily sort of in the energy or electricity markets. I'd spent about 2 years after finishing my undergrad in academic research, focusing on statistical modeling and machine learning. When I was actually 1 year into a PhD and I came across Aurora, and the more I was reading about Aurora, the more lured away, I would say, I sort of got from my PhD. And yeah, it just seemed like a really, really interesting space to be in because I was able to continue doing quantitative work and really interesting research, but applying that to possibly more a real world problem.
Awesome. And Michael, for yourself, what did you study?
Yeah, so I did a bachelor's and honors in econ and finance, and I am just passionate about markets, microeconomics, and different market structures. And I found the energy transition to be a particularly interesting one because it's different to a lot of bond, stock, equity markets you usually deal with, as well as takes different aspects from commodities, infrastructure, and a lot of things to be considered.
Nice. Yeah, I often say that power markets are kind of the closest thing you get to a perfect microeconomic model that you might learn about in undergrad, given it's a uniform product and very much dictated by laws of supply and demand.
Yeah, but it's also so different as well. It's so imperfect at the same time. It's so interesting to study.
Very true. Mahia, I might turn to you. What does the application and interview process look like for a graduate?
Yeah, thank you for having me here today, James. So the application and interview process starts off with the online application, which can be found on our Aurora website. The application will ask candidates a few questions about their personal details, their documents, including their CV, cover letter, and any academic transcripts that they have, and also a summary of why they're interested to join our Aurora graduate program. From there, candidates are then invited to complete a numerical and psychometric assessment via the SHL portal system for us to understand candidates' working styles as well as their quantitative abilities a little bit better. Following this assessment, candidates are then invited to a virtual interview via Microsoft Teams. This interview takes place in a one-to-one format with one of our interviewers, and the interview is generally 30 minutes long. It's a really great way for us to be able to meet candidates and understand more about them. And interviews generally include a mix of both behavioral as well as case study-based questions. If candidates have been successful thus far, that's amazing. They are then invited to the final step in the process, which is the assessment center. So the assessment center is a jam-packed day that takes place in person in our Sydney office and consists of a written test followed by 2 back-to-back interviews. So similar to the virtual interviews that I just mentioned, these interviews will also consist of a mix of behavioral and case study-based questions, but will instead be 45 minutes long each. If candidates have been successful until now, they will then receive an offer from us for the 2025 graduate program.
Terrific. Michael, could you tell us a little bit about what your experience of this process was like?
Yeah, so I just applied on my job website of choice, and then it was about a few days later I got notified of an interview. And then after that interview, quickly after, I think the next day after, I found out about my subsequent interview. And they were all held, I did 3 interviews in total, all one-to-one via Teams. And I met different people from the organization who I'd later be working with, some on a daily basis. And then quickly afterwards, I got a offer in my email.
Awesome. So I think it is worth stressing a slightly different process to what we're going to be running in the upcoming round, but the things that remain in common are a blend of behavioral questions, quantitative questions, and being interviewed by people who will actually be your future colleagues. Daniel, can I turn to you and ask a little bit about your onboarding experience and your first few weeks at Aurora? How did you find that?
Lots of new content is, I think, the main thing I would highlight. The first few weeks is full of getting to know both the people, your colleagues that you'll be working with, but also all of Aurora's different software and quantitative models, that the sort of in-house models that Aurora has, on top of lots of electricity market fundamentals. So I'd say the first about 4 to 6 weeks, I'd expect at least 2 to 3 hours per day of trainings, ranging from sort of economic concepts to more science-based, how does a turbine work, kind of lessons that really just help you get on top of the fundamentals of what's going on in the electricity market. I would say, the other side to the sort of learnings is just lots of one-on-one coffee catch-ups with about anyone and everyone from your office, just to get to know the people that you'll be working with.
Yeah, it is a bit of a crazy time for the cafe downstairs at the Sydney office during those first couple of weeks, with all of the grads going up, copy, one-on-ones with all of the other existing staff. Awesome. Michael, what is it that your typical day looks like now that you're sort of 6 months into the current graduate program?
Yeah, so I'll enter the office, eat something, and I'll get some quick daily administration done, such as looking at Teams messages or emails. And then afterwards, I'll be stuck into a ongoing project, dishing out something which should be urgently released. And then I'll enter a check-in with my advisory team, and we discuss anything which is urgent to be done by the end of the day or the end of the week, or any kind of upcoming events to be mindful of, or any kind of conflicts of interest to be aware of. And then throughout the day, I'll have internal and external catch-ups with team members, clients, presenting results, doing project kickoffs, and then lots of modeling and slide decking. And then throughout the day, I'll make sure to get plenty caffeinated by catching up with my coworkers over an informal coffee, grabbing lunch locally. And then I leave around 5 to 6 o'clock after a good day's work, and I'm able to shut my laptop and not look at it until Monday, the next day morning.
Great. And I think I should make it a little bit clear what the two programs that we sort of run are. So for graduates, you'll spend some time in advisory, which is what Michael is currently in. Advisory is really helping clients with their bespoke projects. So for example, a client wants to build a wind farm. They need us to come in and do a revenue forecast for that wind farm over the next 30 years, as well as forecast that wind farm's impact on the grid. And so it really involves working quite closely with our clients to produce bespoke reports for them. On the flip side, we also have a research team that focuses more on the subscription reports that Aurora produces, which is the team that I'm currently in, but I did actually join in advisory myself. Daniel, you're in research with me at the moment. How does your day differ from Michael's?
I would say the first 2 points that Michael's mentioned, getting in, checking your emails, and sort of having that daily stand-up are fairly similar. I would say the key thing I'm looking at with my emails is checking that all of my model runs from the day before were successfully completed. I think the key difference is probably just the actual projects that you're working on. So I think typically advisory projects tend to have anywhere from like a 2 to 4 week kind of turnaround from when you start. With the research team, you are working on a subscription product. Depending on the product you're working on, you will be releasing that quarterly or sometimes biannually. So the timelines are a little bit longer, but that obviously means, that there's a bit more, I would say, depth that you try and get into these reports. So digging through different government or industry reports that come out, making sure that, essentially you're really capturing everything down to the T that's going on currently in the electricity markets in very, very minute detail, I would say, is sort of the key focus for the research team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We're really involved in the business of providing insights. And so it does require us to be experts on the market. I'd say the same is true for the advisory team, but you're experts in a much more localized issue, right? Like a specific project that wants to connect into the grid, as opposed to sort of developing the suite of scenarios and models that forecast how the entire power market will evolve over time. Michael, what's been your favorite thing that you've worked on so far?
Well, early into my program, I was able to work on a large pumped hydro project. And it was a very large project. It was really interesting to see how the grids, the markets get impacted when such an asset gets deployed. And it was really interesting kind of seeing the little intricacies of the grid, and it really gave me a heightened understanding and a heightened appreciation for grids, especially coming from a markets person. Didn't come into the program interested in grid as much as markets. It gave me definitely an appreciation for the grid space, as well as the importance grids has on markets.
Maybe to unpack the grid comment there a little bit more, I suppose what we do often, particularly in advisory, is a mix of economics and finance and electrical engineering and physics. And so really, there's not really any one particular academic background that can kind of prepare you to do all of that. But you're right, we do provide the training to allow you to be able to undertake modeling across those both market and grid areas. Mahir, it might be a good time to turn to yourself. Who would be a good fit for Aurora's graduate analyst role?
We love to see candidates that really have a genuine passion for the amazing work that we do at Aurora for the global energy transformation. If candidates are able to display the passion that they have for the work that we do, as well as for the energy industry in general, and show an understanding of Aurora's core values, I definitely think that really, really makes them stand out as the ideal candidate. We also look for candidates that are able to demonstrate quantitative skills, because at Aurora we work with a lot of data. So it's really important that candidates are comfortable with working with numbers. We also look for candidates that have an ability to analyze complex information and have structured and logical thinking when it comes to approaching and solving problems. And last but not least, an ability to work effectively in teams and communicate well is definitely a really key point, because collaboration is really at the heart of Aurora.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, we work with colleagues across Sydney, across Melbourne, and across our international offices as well. So being able to, work in that type of environment and make sure everybody's on the same page is critical. Maybe Danielle, I can turn to you and ask on that point, have you had many opportunities to connect and build relationships with the rest of the graduate cohort?
Definitely. I think the key thing that actually brings the graduate cohort together is that training period that you go through. It's a 1 to 2 month training period where you're sitting in lots of trainings together, learning about all the different parts of the energy market. I think one of the most important things there is that the graduate cohort will likely have people with different academic backgrounds. So there will always be 1 or 2 people who might have a bit more information about, a certain training that you're currently doing. And you can always use them as your sort of reference point and get them to explain things on a deeper level to you. And then, of course, reciprocate when it comes to that training that you might understand a little bit better. So I think, the key thing that really brings you together is actually just that training that you go through, because I think it's a lot easier if you go through it together.
Definitely. And, that's my favorite part of running the trainings myself, actually, is watching at the end as, the economists teach the non-economists about markets and supply and demand, and then the electrical engineers can explain the principles of power flow and resistance to everybody else, and you get the statisticians being able to provide insight into what is and isn't a sound way to analyze data. So definitely learning across the cohort and from the existing Aurora staff is really valuable, and it's one of the reasons why it's so good to work somewhere with such a multidisciplinary background. Michael, how would you then describe the office culture at Aurora if you had sort of 3 words to do so?
Yeah, 3 words: inquisitive, cooperative, and dare I say academic. Because I feel like everybody works together and tries to kind of come to a common solution, but at the same time, we always are critically analyzing one's techniques as well as the our existing techniques and the way we do things. And we're constantly striving to get the best science-based or economics-based outcome. And I think it's really important that if you join Aurora, you kind of have to have that outlook. You have to have that outlook like this could be done better, this could be done differently, and being able to cooperate with people to find a common answer for that.
Definitely. I might challenge the academic one, though. I'd maybe describe it myself as more kind of rigorous, but less academic in the sense that, we're trying to do very practical work here. We ultimately, help clients build real projects, get wind farms off the ground, build solar and battery projects, understand how markets are going to evolve and what that's going to do to consumer electricity bills. In some ways, although it is an organization that was, of course, founded by academics and Oxford professors, it is not concerned with, staying in the ivory tower, right? We want to get out there and actually put our analysis to good use and ultimately help ease the energy transition. Daniel, it must be a little bit challenging or at least daunting to kickstart a career in an industry as complex as energy, especially as a recent graduate who did not study energy at university. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Great question. So that was definitely a concern I think I had before I started. I knew I had a lot of quantitative skills, but obviously the electricity markets, there's a lot more going on than just numbers. I think the number one bit of advice I would give to any prospective graduates listening to this is get to know the industry players in the Australian electricity markets. The key one being the Australian Energy Market Operator, or AEMO. There is an abundance of knowledge on their different websites where they have lots of different reports about the electricity markets. I think even just understanding, the different types of things that they would be interested in, like the grid, like forecasting the different types of energy generating assets or power plants that we can expect to see in the future, why, we might want a certain mixture of certain different types of assets, things like that, I think would be, the key things just to even get a taste of, what is currently in focus.
Awesome. And Michael, for yourself, what advice would you give?
A little bit learn how to think like an energy business, and that's been my biggest challenge. And as well, before entering the energy sector, maybe get acquainted with the big challenges facing businesses and think about how would that affect me if I was a business player or if I was a major market player.
A question for Mahia. You must be reviewing so many applications. How should a candidate ensure their application really stands out from the rest?
For me, candidates really stand out when they're able to display their passions and their interests and how these could potentially align for a future at Aurora for them. So being authentic throughout the process is really, really important for candidates because we really want to be able to understand candidates better and help them find the right fit for them in our teams. It's also really important that candidates ensure that they're including their relevant academic background and any work experience in the documents that they're sharing with us, so their CV and their cover letters, and that they're also able to sort of show any knowledge or insights that they can share about Aurora. I definitely would say this gives them extra brownie points because this could be even as simple as sharing their experience of meeting maybe one of our business representatives at a careers fair or a uni event and how that conversation helped sort of drive an interest towards Aurora. So extra brownie points if you can share any sort of insights about Aurora.
Awesome. And maybe from the two of you who have just gone through the process, do you have any specific advice for someone that's looking to apply? Michael, can you go first?
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's so many great analysts, associates at this company. Just network them at LinkedIn, career fairs, however you want to. I can assure we can all give you brilliant advice, brilliant feedback. Feel free to message me or Dan. I know we'll be happy to chat. On top of that, show what you're passionate about. I think that really separates you from the crowd.
And Daniel, what about for yourself?
I think something that would be really good is to trawl sort of the internet for any of the reports or projects that Aurora's actually been working on. So I know, for example, on LinkedIn, you should actually be able to see a lot of the slides, or maybe a limited number of the slides from real world reports that Aurora is actually delivering. And that would give you a very good understanding of, what it is that Aurora is actually doing and the kind of work that we're producing. And I think being able to demonstrate that you have an understanding of, the work that's actually going on and the focuses that we're trying to deliver when we do advisory or research work would be really interesting to see as well.
Awesome. Lastly, Mahia, where can potential candidates go to find out more?
Yeah, so to find out more about our graduate programs, candidates can visit our website at auroraer.com/grads to learn about our culture at Aurora, as well as which career fairs we'll be attending this year across Australia. But it's also the perfect place for them to see when applications go live and to go directly to our online application as well. Applications for our 2025 graduate program will open on Monday, the 22nd of July and close on Sunday, the 1st of September.
Terrific. And that was auroraer.com/grads. That's right?
Yes, that's right.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much all for joining me today, Daniel, Michael, Mahia. And to those who are listening, very much encourage you to apply. I think it's a fantastic place to start your career. You'll learn so much from your colleagues, from the work that we do, and very excited to meeting some of you through the interview process.